Hello everybody and welcome back to Rokai's Raid Guides, where today we are going over Ji-Kun, the mama bird of Throne of Thunder, who's just doing her darndest to take care of her young kids here and feed her family, and we just came in to ruin the party. Real quick, before we jump into the fight, as always, I just want to give a heads up that we have Discord available for all of you for any extra help you might need on these fights, with channels available to everybody for all things 10-man, and then Twitch subscribers and YouTube members have extra channels for more dedicated help, log review, VOD review, and anything else specifically you might need. And without further ado, let's jump into this fight. First of all, Ji-Kun is by far one of the easiest fights on 10-man, and also, uniquely, is one of the fights that is actually easier on 10-man than it is on 25. Most of Throne of Thunder, if not everything besides this boss, is more difficult on 10-man, but the tuning knob just got messed up on this one and is relatively easy for 10-man. Not much of a damage check, not much healing going on, just a little bit of coordination required, and you'll be good to go. Starting off, as always, with raid comp, this is a 2-tank, 2-heal fight, and literally any mixture of DPS is completely fine here. You'll find that it really doesn't make a difference what your raid makeup is besides the 2-tank, 2-healers. Alright, jumping straight into mechanics. Again, not too difficult of a fight, but we'll start with the most complex portion first, and then go through everything else afterwards. So the most difficult portion of this fight is just managing these waves of nests that Ji-Kun has you running to. The first thing to point out on this is that the pattern is always the same. So you only go to nests that are activated, which is kind of marked by this giant red beacon of light you see here. That is an active nest that you need people to go to. And outside of that, all you do is pre-organize who is going to which platform or which nest, kill a couple of adds on that nest, fly back up after picking up a feather, and continue DPSing the boss. All of this can be set up ahead of time, whether you use an MRT note, the Ji Weakaura has it as well, or just a spreadsheet. As long as you pre-assign your groups, which is what we're going to go over next, the nests are very, very simple, because each individual nest doesn't have anything complex going on. It's just how to manage moving your raid from nest to nest that's important. I'll go over organizing who should go to what nest in the strategy section. First, I just want to go over the tiny little things that the adds do inside of the nests first. Each nest can potentially have a few different add types. The first is a hatchling, the second is a fledgling, the third is a juvenile, and then the last, which is heroic only, is a nest guardian. Truthfully, the hatchlings and fledglings don't do anything important. The only thing that you want to do is just kill them as fast as possible, because fledglings will lay eggs that can spawn an additional add, the juveniles, if they're not killed quick enough. So they can basically be ignored as far as mechanics are concerned, just have to die very, very quickly. So you want to make sure you have enough DPS to kind of beat that pseudo damage check, if you will. Now, juveniles, on the other hand, are very scary, and they will exist the entire fight unless they're killed. And here's how they work. So juveniles, they fly into the air, and then they'll fly over top the main platform where everybody else is, and then they will continue to cast an ability called Cheap, which does about 300k damage to random players, and they will do this for the remainder of the fight. So if you let juveniles get out and don't kill them and they make it to this main platform, it's just constant raid damage that's going to be happening for the remainder of the fight. So super important that you kill these quickly and don't let any juveniles spawn by killing the other adds very quickly. Last up is the heroic only add, the nest guardians. These only spawn on predetermined nests, so before going into the fight, you'll know where you have to have your tanks. And again, I'll cover that in the strategy section. But nest guardians, they must be tanked, because if they're not in melee combat, they cast Screech, which interrupts spellcasting. Mana using players will also have their casting speed reduced by 30%. And it does a ton of damage. So basically, make sure a tank is always on a Nest Guardian platform, and you want to kill the Nest Guardian first before you kill the other adds. It's just a priority target type thing. But again, it's only on a couple of the nests, and that is predetermined. We'll go over that in just a moment. The only other mechanic it does is called Talon Strike, which is a frontal, but instead of the cone that we're used to on a lot of different mobs, this is a full 180-degree frontal in front of the Nest Guardian. So tanks, take it to the edge of the nest and face it away. Everybody else on that nest, make sure you're behind the Nest Guardian to avoid getting hit by this. It does a lot of physical damage. That wraps up everything that you need to know about the nests and the ads that spawn within them. So let's jump into the mechanics that Ji-Kun herself is actually doing. The first is feed young, and an important disclaimer, a lot of the footage you've seen so far is from the first PTR testing cycle where feed young did not work properly. In a moment, I'll cut to different footage where you can see what the pools actually look like, but first I'll talk through what the mechanic is, how it functions, then do a better job of showing what it looks like. Just wanted to point out that I know for sure they're not working. On this footage, I'll show you what they look like in a moment. Okay, so Feed Young can do one of two things. When it is cast, it will either go to an active nest if the ads or her little babies in that nest are calling for food. If there's not an active nest with ads calling for food, it will instead spit out a green puddle on the floor of the main platform. So the version of this that we actually care about is when there aren't ads calling for food from their mama bird. It will instead target a couple of players. You'll see those little green globs flying down from the sky, and then left behind is a pool. The pool does pretty large taking damage, so for obvious reasons, just like every other mechanic in all of World of Warcraft, if it's on the ground, avoid it. We also found that currently on PTR, even though the pools are working in this most recent build, a lot of times it was double ticking the appropriate amount of damage, so not sure if that'll end up in live or not, but I would really heavily stress avoiding these puddles. The reason I want to give that disclaimer is part 2 of these puddles is that if you become overwhelmed and too much space is denied by those puddles, they can be removed. In this testing footage, we did not remove any puddles. 1, because we didn't need to, but 2, they were far too deadly with that bug of them double ticking. If you stood inside it, you were going to die. But how you remove it if needed, and assuming they're working properly on live, is you just have somebody pop a defensive, step inside the pool intentionally, and then if you stand inside that pool for 2 to 3 seconds, you will absorb that pool and then clear it from the ground. So just something to be aware of. It's not necessary, especially because, again, in 10-man, it's not tuned super well for the damage check, so we never found we ran out of space. But if you're running into that issue, know that if somebody has a large personal cooldown or your off tank is able to do it, you can step inside the pools, pop a small cooldown, and remove them from the floor. The final and most important part of Feed Young is actually how you can take advantage of it as a damage buff. And this is key to making the fight really, really easy. So when Feed Young is cast, you'll see it going off right now. What Ji-Kun does is she shoots the little slime balls out from the top of her model. And you can see I'm flying through them right now, and then you end up getting a damage buff. So for each glob that you fly through and essentially catch, you get a 100% damage increase, and it can stack up to 2 times. So you'll see the Weakaura just left of the screen right now. I have a 200% damage increase. You can do this on every single player in the raid. All you have to have is one of the feathers, which I know we'll talk about in just a moment, and then on that Feed Young cast, fly above Ji-Kun, fly through one of those green balls that you see, and then you will then have a damage buff. Okay, next mechanic is called Quills. This is the scariest part of the fight for healers, so this is when the most damage is going to be happening. Quills is channeled for 8 seconds, and for every second that it's up, it deals about 90,000 damage to the entire raid. You can see it's being channeled right now. I pop Healing Tide, a small personal. This is the only portion of the fight where you'll need healer throughput cooldowns or any kind of raid cooldown, and it only happens every 90 seconds, so you'll only get 2 or 3 throughout the course of the fight. It's really not scary at all. Just have cooldowns planned for it, but healers, just beware, this is where you're going to want your throughput. The other mechanic that happens every 90 seconds is called Downdraft. Now, Downdraft itself doesn't do any damage. All that it's going to be is an 8-second pushback. So you can see the countdown on the screen now, Downdraft in 2 seconds. You want to run into the center of the room, and then you'll need to run against these winds. Now, it pushes you more than your base movement speed, so you'll want some kind of movement ability, whether that's Blink, a Warlock Portal, a Stampeding Roar from a Druid or a Symbiosis Warrior, or Rocket Boots. Any of those will keep you on the platform, but if you do not have a movement speed ability up, it will push you off. So just be aware of that. It doesn't deal any damage, but you have to run against it, and it is going to be faster than your base movement speed. Don't worry, if you get pushed off, you don't die, but it will basically make you AFK for the next 15 or 20 seconds as you spin in a circle in the sky. The final damage dealing mechanic is called Caw. Now, this happens way more frequently than the other two that we just talked about. Targets one random player, and then anybody within 8 yards of the impact zone takes about 400,000 damage. You can see just to my left, it's that little sonar pulse that just went off on Gunk. You can dodge it if you're super fast. For the most part, whoever it picks is probably going to take the damage. But this happens so frequently that the main piece of this is you just want everyone to always be at an 8-yard spread. And if you can, try to move out of that as the individual who's targeted by Caw. Okay, moving all the way back to the beginning as related to the nest portion are the feathers that you saw us picking up and using early on in the fight. So what happens is on each nest that you go to, after you kill all of the adds on that nest, 4 feathers can spawn. That'll be important later. So 4 feathers can spawn, which means you never want more than 4 people per nest. After you've killed your adds, you'll see these yellow glowing feathers dropped down on our heads. You just need to run over it. You'll get an extra action button, and it has 3 charges and lasts for 15 seconds. So when you use your extra action button, that's what will, 1, let you fly up from a lower nest, or 2, of course, fly up to an upper nest, and 3, and arguably most importantly, is actually fly through those globs to pick up the damage buff that we talked about earlier. Now, the last thing about the feathers is that you can't pick it up whenever you want to. So you can use the 3 charges that you get at any pace that you want. However, after picking up the feather initially, you have to wait 60 seconds before getting another one. The reason that this is important is you need to use your feather for 2 different purposes. Either 1, getting to or getting back up from a nest that you go to, and 2, you need to use some of those charges to pick up the feed young buff or your damage buff. So you want to make sure that when you need to refresh a feather that you haven't just spam used all 3 charges, and that when you go to your next nest, that buff has then fallen off and you can pick up a fresh set of feathers. Tank warning. This is a mechanic only for tank players related to Ji-Kun. Everybody else can skip this and go straight to the strategy section. So tanks, Infected Talons is the only thing that Ji-Kun does specifically to you, which is when she strikes you with a melee ability, she supplies a stacking debuff called Infected Talons. Does 50,000 nature damage every 3 seconds for 10 seconds, but this does stack. So just like so many other fights, it's a taunt swap. I'm not going to give you guys a recommended amount. I know a lot of you love to vengeance cheese to maximize your damage. Just know that it stacks and does increasing amounts of damage, and eventually you have to taunt swap to let this debuff fall off. And that's it. That's the only other tank thing for you guys. Enjoy vengeance maxing this till the days you fall over and die and we make fun of you, because, well, that's what tank players do in MoP. Cheese the vengeance, have fun with it. It's super easy. Don't put too much thought into it. Okay, mechanics out of the way. Super simple, like I said. So let's jump into strategy. Another disclaimer, on this testing poll, there are not pools. The pools are not working. Please refer back to the earlier section in mechanics where I have the other footage with the Ji-Kun pools on the ground. But that footage, we were in T15 BIS, which I didn't think was a fair representation of how much damage we'll be doing. So cutting back to the kill where we had the appropriate level of gear, but the pools are not working. So just be aware of that. When you guys are doing this live, you will have those feed young pools to avoid or soak up. Okay, let's jump into nest management. So you can see on the left-hand side of my screen now, I have an MRT note. In addition to the Ji Weakaura coordinating who is supposed to go to what nest, we kind of messed this up, to be honest. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to the note. Instead, I'm going to put our finalized and revised version of how you should split your DPS up on screen. So I'll leave this up here for a while so that you guys have the chance to copy it. I want to break down why we did this first. So most important piece of this is 1, making sure we had tanks on the Nest Guardian platforms. 2 is that we split up our DPS in a way that would ensure everybody had the ability to get feathers so that when we chose to lust and burn the boss, everybody could pick up the feed young buff because they still had a remaining feather. So that's why you see the repeats like DPS 2 being in the 1st and 3rd nest and then also in the 5th is to make sure they had feathers. Same thing for everybody else. So that's why this was split up this way. I would slot in your roster using this formula, right? DPS 1 is on platform 1 and 3. DPS 2 is also on 1 and 3, but DPS number 3 is only on platform number 1, right? And then he'll stay on the boss the rest of the time and use his remaining 2 charges of his feathers just to pick up the feed young buff when we're about to lust. Second part of this, we always used the same healer on each nest. That's personal preference, doesn't matter to you or I. Just whatever healer you'd like, you can go to the nests or you could switch. And then the final piece of this, at the very top of the screenshot, you can see the locations. So the first 3 nests are all below the platform. The next 3 nests after that are above the platform. Now, nests don't stop happening after the 6th one. They'll continue after that. Just from what we found and then trying to play it extra safe for everybody else, is that really after nest 6, you will have plenty of damage to just lust, kill Ji-Kun, and ignore the nest after that. However, nests will continue past number 6. So if you need to, you can go to the next glowing nest and kind of just repeat the order over again from the starting number 1 nest and just repeat that. My recommendation, however, is after nest number 6, everybody will have the ability to pick up their buff. Make sure you all have that feed young damage amp, lust, and ignore everything else and just kill the boss. Back into the fight, there really isn't much else strategy-wise. You organize your nests ahead of time, again, using whatever tool you like, Ji Weakaura, spreadsheet, MRT note, whatever works best for you guys. Pre-assign where everybody is supposed to be in their nests, and that's it. Don't be like me, where your feather runs out and fall to your death. That's not fun. Thankfully, it picks you back up and scoops you into the sky. Even though it's funny to see, I wanted to show you guys that it's not the end of the world if you miss it. Again, this fight is tuned so easily. You can make mistakes and still be completely fine. Just make sure that at all times you guys are spread. If needed, soak any of the green puddles on the floor. Lastly, use raid cooldowns for any quills. And then after that 6th nest, lust and burn the boss. You pull all that off, use your spreadsheets or favorite organization tools, and this mama bird will topple over so easily. If you're looking for things that you should progress in early weeks, add this to the list. It may even be the second easiest boss as long as you have a good organized and coordinated raid. Might not be the most pug friendly, but for a guild, I think this should be a walk in the park. So best of luck, everybody. Thank you as always for watching, supporting. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. If you need more detailed help, join the Discord, also linked in the description below, and we will see you all in the next one.